In the Third Age, 5 Istari, or wizards, arrived at the Grey Havens from the Undying Lands at different times. Although these wizards were actually Maiar, they appeared in the form of old men, each carrying a staff. Over the centuries, these staves became the symbols of the wizards, but they were far more than mere symbols. Hello everyone, Dragon here. Today, I will cover what the wizard staves are used for, and how Gandalf managed to reclaim or replace his broken and lost staff. There are no records in history detailing the appearance of the wizard's staves. We don't know what kind of wood they were made from, or if they were intricately carved. It's known that the wizards often referred to their staves as walking sticks, indicating that these tools were used as both simple walking aids and as instruments of magic. As you might know, there is very little information about the two blue wizards, so we have no idea how they used their staves. Among the remaining 3 wizards, the one whose actions in Middle-earth are the most documented is Gandalf. Therefore, we'll focus primarily on how Gandalf used his staff to better understand the functions and purposes of these tools. First and foremost, a wizard's staff served the simple purpose of a walking stick. Historical records describe the Istari as leaning on their staves when they first stepped off the ships, emphasizing this aspect of their arrival. We see Gandalf frequently using his staff in this manner. In the Shire, he was also commonly seen as an old man with a pointed hat, leaning on his staff. Gandalf was so intertwined with his staff that even his name means Elf of the Wand. In the North, he was given this name likely because he never seemed to be without his staff, always carrying it by his side. It might seem odd that such a powerful being as a Maya would need a staff to walk, but the Istari were intentionally sent to Middle-earth in the form of elderly men, and this wasn't just a disguise. When Gandalf stood on the bridge of Khazad-dûm, facing the Balrog, he leaned heavily on his staff, lamenting his grim fate. In short, the staff was indeed a tool on which a wizard physically relied. However, Gandalf sometimes used this known characteristic to his advantage in acts of deception. When he wanted to appear as a harmless old man, he would lean on his staff, such as when entering Edoras and telling Hama not to take an old man's walking stick away. Thus, while the staff genuinely functioned as a walking aid, it also served as a clever tool for misdirection. One of the most obvious ways Gandalf used his staff was, of course, as a weapon. These sturdy rods were highly effective for both defense and offense. Yet Gandalf's staff was never his sole weapon. He often wielded a sharp weapon in his other hand, most notably the sword Glamdring after he discovered it. He was highly skilled at using both his staff and sword simultaneously in battle. On the other hand, it seems Gandalf didn't place excessive value on his staff. He wasn't above using it as a simple tool, even banging it against doors as a makeshift knocker when the situation called for it. Of course, the most intriguing aspect of the staff is how it was used to perform a spell, and Gandalf frequently employed it for this purpose. Among these uses, perhaps the most gentle, was when the staff acted as a sort of pen. During the quest of Erebor, Gandalf marked Bilbo Baggins's door with a rune using his staff to signify him as the chosen burglar. But not all uses of Gandalf's staff were so simple. First of all, Gandalf often used his staff as a source of light. When the Fellowship entered Moria and Boromir asked how they would navigate the darkness, Gandalf simply replied, "Follow my staff," and a light appeared at its tip. Throughout their journey in Moria, the Fellowship was guided by the light from Gandalf's staff, and he could even intensify it or make it flash to illuminate larger areas when needed. A similar instance occurred during the quest of Erebor, where Gandalf and the dwarves used the light from his staff to navigate the dark tunnels of the Misty Mountains while fleeing from orcs. We also see Gandalf using his staff to ignite fires. When the Fellowship was trapped on the Caradhras Pass, unable to proceed due to the intense storm, they tried to light a pile of wood to keep from freezing. With a command word, Gandalf plunged his staff into the woodpile, causing a green-blue flame to burst forth and set the wood ablaze. However, there were instances where Gandalf lit fires without using his staff. Right after descending from Caradhras, when the Fellowship was attacked by wargs, Gandalf uttered a command word that set the surrounding trees on fire, driving the wargs away. This example shows that while the staff was a useful tool, Gandalf didn't always need it to perform his spell. Aside from fire, Gandalf could also summon lightning with his staff. When Gandalf arrived at Edoras and stood before King Theoden, Grima Wormtongue began shouting accusations, furious that Hama hadn't confiscated the wizard's staff. Gandalf raised his staff, and a flash of lightning struck, knocking Wormtongue to the ground. A similar situation occurred during the quest of Erebor. When Bilbo, dwarves, and Gandalf took refuge in a cave and were attacked by orcs, Gandalf escaped capture in a burst of lightning, which killed several orcs and allowed him to disappear. However, unlike in the Edoras instance, it's unclear whether Gandalf actually used his staff in this scenario. As with the earlier fire example, he might have done it without the staff. We also know of Gandalf using his staff to manipulate the environment and perceptions during his encounter with Theoden in Edoras. When Grima attempted to engage Gandalf in a verbal confrontation, Gandalf cast off his ragged gray cloak, revealing his gleaming white robes, and raised his staff. In that moment, with a clap of thunder, the daylight streaming through the windows disappeared, and the hall darkened as if night had fallen. The fires in the hall dimmed, leaving only Gandalf, radiant in his white attire, illuminated against the darkness. All these examples might lead one to believe that the staff itself holds power. However, since Gandalf could perform magic even without it when necessary, it seems that the staff is merely a tool. It's likely that the staff serves to channel and perhaps even amplify the wizard's power, acting as an extension of his magical abilities. When Gandalf faced the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm, he raised his staff and struck the bridge with a powerful cry as the Balrog stepped upon it. Both the bridge and the staff shattered. This suggests that the staff couldn't withstand the force of Gandalf's spell, reinforcing the idea that the true power lay with the wizard, not the staff. However, this doesn't mean the staff was insignificant. As well as channeling the power of a wizard, it was also a symbol of his power. After the Battle of Helm's Deep, when Gandalf confronted Saruman, he broke his staff to strip him of his power. The act wasn't because Saruman's staff was inherently powerful, but because it was a representation of his authority and strength. In front of Orthanc, Gandalf demanded that Saruman hand over the keys to Orthanc along with his staff, promising that they might be returned if Saruman ever proved himself worthy of forgiveness. In essence, Gandalf was saying that Saruman would retain his magical power, but would be expelled from the Order of Wizards. But Saruman arrogantly declared that he would only comply if Gandalf brought him all 4 wizards' staves, rejecting the offer outright. It was only then that Gandalf broke Saruman's staff, declaring him no longer a wizard and formally expelled from the Order. The act of breaking Saruman's staff didn't strip him of all his power. After all, Gandalf had lost his own staff before, or had it broken, yet his strength remained unaffected. Saruman, too, could have potentially continued wielding his powers with another staff. However, after Gandalf's intervention, Saruman lost a significant portion of his might. When Gandalf declared, "You have no power here," Saruman's true downfall began. Not because of the broken staff, but because Gandalf had the power to take away Saruman's standing and influence, forcing him into exile. There's a frequently asked question about Gandalf's staff. During his long struggle against Sauron, Gandalf loses his staff multiple times, and even has it broken when fighting the Balrog. So, where does he get his staff afterward? The answer is actually quite simple. He doesn't find it. There isn't a single irreplaceable staff. When one is lost or broken, Gandalf simply continues with another staff. In Tolkien's world, the wizard's staves don't hold the same unique, irreplaceable significance as they do in something like, for example, the Harry Potter universe. They aren't necessarily special or tied to a specific wizard. If Gandalf's staff had any extraordinary qualities or was one of a kind, believe me, Tolkien would have certainly given it a name and detailed its history. Instead, he doesn't even bother explaining how Gandalf gets a new one each time he loses it. When Gandalf escaped from the top of Orthanc with the help of the eagle, where did he get his new staff? Most likely, Elrond gave it to him in Rivendell. And when it broke in Moria, he probably received that one from Galadriel in Lothlorien. And it doesn't really matter, because the real power is not in the staff, but in the wielder. Of course, as always, remember that all these are my own interpretations. In truth, Tolkien didn't seem to place any special emphasis on the wizard's staves, and as I mentioned, this in itself is evidence that they weren't all that crucial. Considering all this, it becomes clear just how meaningless the motivation of the stranger character searching for his staff throughout episodes of Amazon's The Rings of Power series really is. But then again, what is meaningful in that show anyway? Well, that's all for today. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the topic. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel, and of course, a like would be greatly appreciated. Take care until we meet again.